comply with pronouncements issuing from these documents. So, and here in Nigeria, Section 12 of Nigerian Constitution accords recognition to international law that has been ratified in Nigeria. So the working group, being an offshoot of the United Nations Human Rights Council, are all under United Nations, the canopy of the United Nations, and the working documents are working documents or aspects of international law that have been signed or ratified by Nigeria. So under Section 12 of Nigerian Constitution, this decision issuing from the UN Working Group is binding on Nigeria. If Nigeria fails to obey or comply with it, I think it will lead to a very nasty diplomatic conflict, the sort that the United Nations had with Sani Abacha, the late Sani Abacha. We know how that one panned out. Nigeria has not recovered from that till today. So you don't disrespect UN opinions, decisions, resolutions, and all this, and go scot-free. It never happened in history. And the fact that it's called opinion does not reduce its efficacy. Somebody was asking me whether this is a judgment. I said, of course, it's a judgment. In diplomatic circles, they don't use judgment, the word judgment. They don't use ruling, they don't use order. They consider those words words of compulsion. They use diplomatic language like opinion, request, mandate, resolutions, decisions, and things like that to hand down their decisions or point of view. So, or to push their adjudicatory function. So this is something that must be obeyed. And Nigeria has a new opportunity to do the right thing. It already made 3 mistakes. The first mistake was the one you pointed out, the illegal rendition, the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu on 19 June 2021. That was the first error. The second error was to put him on trial, despite the rendition, despite the lack of proper conferment of jurisdiction on the trial court. That was the second mistake. The third mistake by Nigeria was for the court to refuse to accord the tenacity of the judgment of the Abia State High Court that settled the question once and for all that Nnamdi Kanu did not jump bail. On the strength of that judgment, the judge should have reinstated Nnamdi Kanu's bail, but that didn't happen. That's the third mistake. Now, this is the fourth opportunity. If Nigeria fails to comply with this opinion, that will be the fourth mistake. And I don't think this one will not come with countervailing consequences. And you don't need more. Nigeria does not require more. You don't need a court order to revalidate this opinion. The opinion is self-validating, and it should be obeyed from the very top, from the very topmost part of Nigerian government. So it just requires some kind of pronouncement by the government of Nigeria that they are complying with the UN opinion. With respect to the unconditional release of Nnamdi Kanu, and with respect to the other issues that were resolved in favor of Nnamdi Kanu and the IPOB, notably that the enterprise, self-determination, for which Nnamdi Kanu is being persecuted, is an enterprise that is protected both under both domestic and international laws. So these are the things that we need to be looking at, and ignore the rantings of small groups that wish to push the Nigerian government over the precipice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask the question, if the United Nations ruling, if it is an opinion or a verdict that is binding, but you already picked this question, you answered it before I asked it. Now, I would like to go to your colleague, Attorney Fein. The question here is, Barrister Ejimakor, you've said that Nigeria cannot, fault the decision of the UN. But we do know that, of course, we are very much aware that, the United Nations decision, especially the UN Human Rights Council, also known as the United Nations Working Group on Business and Human Rights. It was established in June 2011 to enforce human rights issues, transitional operation, and other business enterprises. Of course, its decision is, should be taken seriously. And as a violation of it can lead to UN sanction. But it's also known that some countries have violated UN resolution without any significant thing happening, because the UN cannot impose these sanctions itself, but requires member states to take action when countries violate resolution. As a result, often nothing happens. And when countries violate the UN, the sanction because of one thing or the other, member states are unwilling. It's because member states are unwilling to act. So the question is to you, Attorney Fein. Now your colleague has said that this resolution is binding and Nigeria cannot violate it. But given to the fact that there has been people who violated it, I still want to know if there is any other thing you guys can do, or, is there any other thing that you are going to, any other action you are going to take?
Of course there is.
In addition to what your colleague has said.
Yes, if there's continual contempt for the opinion, we will seek, which has happened when South Africa flouted anti-apartheid resolutions, mandates of the UN, to expel Nigeria from the United Nations by a vote of the General Assembly. Moreover, under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, there is authority in the Security Council to impose mandates, including economic, military isolation. And indeed, the UN Security Council has authority to employ military force, which was done, for example, in the case of Korea in 1950. In addition, the United States is very concerned, and I can guarantee you that the United States Congress will be fully apprised of the contempt of the order, and the United States has the leverage to impose economic and military sanctions, prohibit any member of the Nigerian government from ever traveling to the United States, putting them on what we call the Magnitsky list of fundamental human rights rogues, denied any ability to access and have business transactions in the United States, even severed diplomatic relations. You may recall when Diko, a Nigerian, and always a crook, was kidnapped by Nigerian forces in UK. The UK suspended diplomatic relations for 2 years. Nnamdi's a UK citizen. So all these things are risked. And moreover, there's also another escalating possibility, which is to place Nigeria on the list of state sponsors of terrorism in the United States, which would immediately trigger crippling sanctions, including denial of the opportunity to sell oil, which would bankrupt the government overnight. And the United States, despite rising oil prices, has been willing to prohibit oil from Iran and Russia, to impose sanctions. In sum, Nigeria will be crippled economically and militarily and diplomatically if it flouts this decree.
Okay, thank you very much. So Nigeria should take this decision seriously, and shouldn't, Nigeria is known for, it's flagrant, disobedience to law. That's why I want to ask this question, so that Biafrans outside will understand that Nigeria is not going to get around this so easily. So thank you very much. Yeah, go on. You wanted to add something?
Remember, you've omitted at least one element here that's important. The working group decision equally condemned Kenya under President.
We're getting to that.
Yes, and we know that there are presidential elections forthcoming in Kenya. I think they're later on this year. If there's someone who's elected who isn't, a token of Kenyatta, they could spill a lot of evidence, even more directly implicating the Nigerian government in the kidnapping and torture. It's still a little bit blurry right now. We know that the Kenyan authorities were acting at the behest or in collusion of Nigeria, because it would be unheard of for a country to permit another country to invade its sovereignty, to send its security forces there, kidnap someone, and make no protest. Kenya has never, with Kenyatta's present, said a single syllable against what Nigeria did to Nnamdi Kanu on Kenyan sovereign soil. So that's pretty conclusive with regard to their complicity in this whole human rights tragedy and atrocity.
Okay, thank you very much. You have actually answered the following question that was supposed to come later on. That is all good. And Mr. Ben Nwankwo, you are a proponent of right for self-determination, not only for Biafra but also for humanity. Your position as co-founder and executive vice president of the Ambassador for Self-Determination is a testament to this view. We know that President Buhari is not alone in the ongoing abduction and extrajudicial killing of Biafra youth who are campaigning for freedom. The president, has aided, but he has aids both from, national and state level. It is also clear that most of his aides are, politicians who are of Igbo descent. The recent incident in Awamama, where 14 Igbo youth attending a wedding ceremony were killed by Hope Uzodinma's Ebubago, is said to be a clear indication that the involvement of Igbo politicians in the ongoing killing of Igbo youth is a plan by the United, is something that is state level. So my question is there any plan by the United Nations to intervene in this killing specifically? What is your organization, the Ambassador for Self-Determination, currently doing to stop the wanton killing?
Thank you. Well, everybody should know that this has been a very bloody month in our land, Biafra. So we are not here to entertain. It's not a happy day for our people. Our children are being slaughtered, extrajudiciary. And let me take you back a little bit. You spoke about our mama. That happened this month. And before then, there was slaughter of 18 youths in the Idemili local government, I believe North, okay, in Anambra State. And recently, there was killing a couple of children that were shot and left by the roadside. That happened just a couple of days ago. So there are killings all over the place. And the governors are not doing anything. You have invaders from the north. They come into our land. They rape, they kill, they destroy, they desecrate our land. They murder our children and they leave. And yet you have an executive governor, the first citizen of the state. They do nothing and they say nothing. It happens in Imo State. It happened in River State. River State was legendary. 2020, October 2020, Governor Wike led the effort to slaughter close to 4,000 Igbos in River State, in Oyibo community.
Obibo, yeah.
Obibo, correct. And nothing happened. With authority from the commander-in-chief, Buhari himself, in collaboration with the governor of River State, slaughtered close to 4,000 of our young men and women, including our mothers and fathers, elderly people, children as young as 10 years old. It was a memorable day that we will not forget. and we will not let the world to forget. In Anambra State, the same thing is repeating itself. In Imo State, they have a killing squad to kill their own people, not to kill the enemy, but their own people. Ambassador for Self-Determination is not advocating that anybody should be killed. No. We're a humanitarian organization that is saying, let the people be free. Let them be free to determine, have a right to their self-determination. Let them determine their own government. Let them live freely. That's what we're saying. So specifically to your question, what's going to happen? These governors are not going to go free. They will not go free. They are going to be called, okay, to give an account of what happened. Give an account of what happened in their state, in their respective states. They are going to stand trial in the court of competent jurisdiction. We are taking them to the World Tribunal. All of you. You are not going to continue to kill innocent people, people's sons and daughters, and you go home and sleep and have your life and be free. It's not going to happen anymore. Enough is enough. So prepare for the rain that is coming. You cannot kill and get away with it anymore. That's what we are doing. We are going to follow every legal means to make sure that they are brought to justice so they can answer for their own crime. What they are doing in Biafra land is genocide, being supported by the Fulani corrupt government that equip them with military and weapons to slaughter innocent people. Ambassador for Self-Determination is here to say that enough is enough. We are not going to sit around and let you wipe out a people. Biafra is our land. We love our land. We have not risen up any in history known to man to invade any country, to invade any indigenous people in that country, or to rise up to destroy their land, rape their women. All these things that are happening to our people, we have not done that to anybody or any group in that country. So God is our witness, and man is also the witness to that.
Thank you.
So that's what we are doing. So they will have their day in court. And that court is not going to be in Nigeria because there's no law in Nigeria. They are going to answer to a court of competent jurisdiction that will try that case. So that's what's coming, just so you know.
Thank you. So in addition, to sum it up, what you're saying is that there is plan, by the United Nations, to prosecute Buhari and his aides at the state and national level. Is that what we can sum up together?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir. Barrister Ejimakor, let me ask you this. Just recently, you and your colleague had applied or filed a file for bail for Nnamdi Kanu before Justice Binta Nyako, which she refused. Is the Binta Nyako hearing now obsolete in view of this UN decision? I mean, what is the next step in terms of hearing?
Well, yes, she refused that bail, and quite unjustifiably so. Any judicious and impartial judge that took into consideration the tenor and the reach of the judgment I obtained from the Abia State High Court in favor of Nnamdi Kanu should have very easily restored Nnamdi Kanu's bail non-pro-tonque, relating back, because that judgment cured whatever notion of Nnamdi Kanu or whatever notion the judge had that Nnamdi Kanu jumped bail. That's number one. Number two, an attempt was made by the lead counsel in that case, Michael Zubome, SAN. He made an attempt to draw the attention of the judge to that judgment I obtained from Abia State High Court. And another very favorable ruling I obtained from a continental court and prohibited by rules of confidentiality from mentioning the name of the tribunal. But it's a continental tribunal that had made rulings that were highly favorable to the position of IPOB and Nnamdi Kanu, and that very ruling or decision was also brought to the attention of the judge. So despite all of this, the judge proceeded to deny the reinstatement of the bail. So the next step now, within the narrow confines of that case, is to take that denial to Court of Appeal. But you don't see Robinson. When Nigeria renditioned Nnamdi Kanu in Kenya, it opened a hornet's nest that has triggered the international legal order. So what we have here is a situation where Nnamdi Kanu's fate does no longer exclusively lie within the hands of the criminal court in Abuja. The international legal order has been triggered, and we don't know yet. The jury is out. What's going to happen? There is a prospect for escalation of this UN opinion. There is prospect for escalation to other tribunals and bodies internationally, just like Ben Nwankwo had mentioned and Bruce Fein had suggested. So the idea that the entire decision will be taken within the confines, narrow confines of the criminal court in Abuja is no longer valid. And of course, I have a live case that is pending before the Federal High Court in Omaha. And in that very case, my prayer includes releasing Nnamdi Kanu and repatriating him back to Kenya at his option, or to England at his option, because England is his country, so that Nigeria can go to England or Kenya and do the right thing. That is one of the reliefs or remedies that I was asking the court to grant to us. So that case is still open, and I'm sure there are a lot of other things, maneuvers Bruce Fein is doing, and there could be other new legal maneuvers that could be done on the strength and plank of this opinion from the United Nations. Because if Nigerian government fails to obey or comply, you had expressed some concern about that. In addition to bringing the international diplomatic order to bear on Nigeria, or the full weight of the United States government, as Bruce suggested, there are local remedies. This very opinion from the United Nations can ground new applications to high courts in Nigeria, bearing a process that lawyers call mandamus. It's an application that you make to a judge to give an order compelling the government to do what it's supposed to do. So now that the UN has spoken, it's something Nigerian government is supposed to do. So on approach, after a formal approach to the Nigerian government and a certain deadline given, and he fails to comply, apart from the repercussions that could generate internationally, there are legal repercussions that could also generate domestically. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, now that you said something about deadlines, I want to know, is there with regard to this decision, is there a deadline given to the Nigerian government to react? I mean, to come to you guys, or have they tried to communicate with you guys to discuss the way forward, the Nigerian government in any way?
You asking me?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah. In the document itself, yeah, sure. In the document itself, Nigerian government and of course our side and Kenyan government were all given 6 months within which to report back to the working group. I will not say, well, that is a deadline of some sort, but it does not mean that Nigerian government has a whole 6 months.
That's what I want to know, because
to comply. Yeah. I mean, a sincere government, a government that is guided by rule of law and respect for international legal opinion and the international legal regime would comply right away. There's no need to wait out the 6 months. That would be another evidence of insincerity. Yeah. But if you want to call it a deadline, yes, Nigeria must file a report of compliance within 6 months. So in a sense, that's a deadline. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So thank you very much. Yeah, so the question now is, I would like to ask you, Barrister Fein, there is a smell of war everywhere in Nigeria at the moment. Not a day goes by without a report of kidnapping by Islamist terrorist group. On 5th July, the breakaway, faction Islamic State West African Province called ISWAP from Boko Haram carried out a successful attack on a well-secured prison in Nigeria, Nigerians, Abuja. In terms of the life of Nnamdi Kanu, do you see this event as a means to end by the Nigerian government? Do you see these occurrences as a means to an end by the Nigerian government?
As a preface, I want to go back just previously and to observe that I have filed criminal complaints against judges in Nigeria for making rulings that are transparently associated or aligned with the genocide of Biafrans and the illegal detention of Nnamdi Kanu. So you're talking about leverage. How can you enforce the judgment of the working group? Well, and this goes back to the precedent after World War II. Nazi judges were prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to prison in the Nuremberg trials. Just because you're a judge, it's not home free. You don't necessarily get to escape accountability. We've spoken about accountability for all these quisling governors in the Biafran nations, the Biafran states. But the judges need to know you go along with this, what I call judicial murder, you're going to be in hock like everyone else. So that ought to concentrate their minds wonderfully. With regard to the so-called the prison break, if you will, it has all the earmarks of government complicity. No one shows up for hours at a security prison, all the hundreds of prisoners released. It looks like a dress rehearsal for a second effort, but this is the time they don't go for that prison facility, but for DSS and go after Nnamdi Kanu. And I've written actually about this and suggested this likes a little bit of a reprise of poisoning MKO Abiola in prison, who was detained, like Nnamdi, because he actually won an election, was popular against the military thugs. And so I said, this is where we got your eyes, the eyes are on you. Don't make this a pretext for sending some thugs in, to capture and kidnap Nnamdi Kanu. We know the game's up. We already know that this government preposterously has announced that these hundreds of Boko Haram terrorists have been reformed, and therefore they can come back and be welcomed into the arms of the government. Really, they've given no evidence of even one person being reformed, or even one terrorist renouncing terrorism, suggesting they are very, very sorry for having participated in the terrorism. So this is a criminally infested government, and it can't be trusted with anything. Remember Machiavelli. We need to remember better to be feared than to be loved in dealing with this outfit here. And all they know is strength, which is exactly what we're going to confront them with. One last point I want to underscore. There is no statute of limitations on these war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, in which these government officials are implicated. No statute of limitations. This Buhari government is not going to be around much longer. Everybody needs to think, you're going to have a protector when Buhari's gone, because there definitely could be political deals made. You end up at the International Criminal Court. See what happened with Omar Bashir in Sudan. He thought he would stay immune forever, right? Then the government got overthrown and he may be back for the International Criminal Court. So they need to think, politics isn't forever. Statute of limitations, your crimes are forever. You're going to be prosecuted unless you renounce very quickly.
Okay, just thank you very much. Just a quick one. In addition to what you said previously about the involvement of Kenyan government, I would like to know, Kenyan government has consistently denied its involvement in the abduction and the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu. So the question here is, does the UN ruling underline the indisputable Kenyan complicity? And what is the Kenyan government position on this recent UN directive?
No, the Kenya is every bit as much convicted by the UN opinion decree as Nigeria is. Kenya has ignored everything. And I think because the finger is pointed at President Kenyatta. And of course, they have an upcoming presidential elections. One of his toadies, he's touting, to succeed him, so he doesn't end up in prison. You remember, President Kenyatta previously was hauled before the International Criminal Court. He was indicted for genocide and crimes against humanity, and then witnesses kind of disappeared by intimidation, so they couldn't move forward with the trial. So the leopard's already shown its spots in Kenya. I think we need to think that with an election forthcoming, if they vote against Kenyatta's successor, we can expect some cooperation and try to walk away from the stigma that this judgment has given to Kenya, and that would be another step forward. Again, I want to underscore, politics is not a petrified forest; it changes. And these people who think, okay, as long as I'm safe under the existing dispensation, I'm okay. You got other things coming. Justice never sleeps.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Mazi Nwankwo, many Biafrans are of the opinion that the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu and the subsequent detention of Kanu is not only a violation of his human rights, but also more or less a deliberate act of humiliation of the whole Biafra. What is your opinion on this very, thinking?
Thank you. It is very important that Biafrans understand what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu represents. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu does not represent his family. Neither does he represent himself. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is not the struggle. He is just the face of the struggle. He's the face of millions of people that have been kept in perpetual slavery and chronic poverty over the years. That's who he represents. These are the things that brought him out. If everything was working in Nigeria, you will not have a Mazi Nnamdi Kanu today. The reason you have a Mazi Nnamdi Kanu today is because we do not have a just society. And free men deserve to live freely. Women deserve to go to their farm and harvest their crops and come home safely. Our adults should be able to take a walk. Our children should be able to play in their school and go to school and come back without being kidnapped. Our young men and women should be able to go to their schools and stay in the dorm without being invaded by terrorists from the north. These are all injustices that brought Mazi Nnamdi Kanu out. So for those for our people that are thinking, I'm not supporting the movement, I'm not against Biafra, I'm for one Nigeria, it doesn't matter what you think. It does not matter what you think. When the rain falls, it's going to fall on everyone. The terrorists are not going to ask you whether you agree with Mazi Nnamdi Kanu or not before they kidnap you. They're not going to ask you whether you support the Biafra movement or not before they rape your daughter or before they kidnap your son. Look at what happened in Uli. A young woman went to the farm. She was brutally murdered. Her body cut into pieces. And these things are shown to the whole world. So the people that are thinking Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is the problem, we have now seen that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is not the problem of Nigeria. We have seen that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is the solution to the problem that you have in Nigeria today. He's made that very clear. We don't hate anybody. We are not calling to kill anyone. Why don't we just come together and decide how we are going to live? People must understand that children that grew up under the same roof They do not play together for 20 years. And if they do, there has to be a coming together. There has to be a Congress to decide how do we live under one roof and how do we exist without killing each other? How do we exist without raping each other's women? How do we exist without terrorizing each other? Everything that Nnamdi Kanu has been saying over the years is not happening. United Nations has agreed with Nnamdi Kanu that extrajudicial killing of people just because they come from Southeast is against human rights. They've agreed with Nnamdi Kanu that destruction of life and properties, that is against human rights. They've agreed with Nnamdi Kanu that invasion of a community and wiping out people from their own ancestral land to now be occupied by terrorists, that is against human rights. They've agreed with Nnamdi Kanu on a lot of all these things. Our erudite attorney, in well-articulated complaint, listed all these things. The United Nations Working Group agreed on every single one of them. And these are not Biafrans, for the records. These are people that are from United States, the 5-member group, Poland, India, Chad. Oh, guess what? Even Kenya. These are your 5 working group members in Greece, in Geneva, that made this decision after a thorough study and investigation of this complaint. It was not something that was done quickly. This decision came after a thorough investigation and inquiries and research. And even the decision from Nigerian court that was championed by our erudite attorney Ejiofor. No, I'm sorry, not Ejiofor. Ejimakor, that is right here. Sorry about that, my friend. So that's where we are. That is exactly where we are right now. So that the world may know that we are not keeping quiet. It is sad that people that are in Biafra land, our leaders, our governors, that things that other people can see from Europe, they cannot see it. Or maybe they do see that, but they've chosen to turn a blind sight. But we are not going to stand for that anymore. Everybody will now have to stand on their own 2 legs and defend their own actions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've in your statement, there is not just a fact in it, but I think Biafrans listening to you today will have a kind of hope, because in the last few months, or let me say since the abduction of Nnamdi Kanu, it's like there is of course the judicial aspect or the legal aspect of the IPOB and the Biafran agitation. They're doing the whole work they are doing, even those that people don't know about the background work. They are doing their thing, but still the voice of Nnamdi Kanu is not there. And this is for most Biafran a kind of downcasting situation. So with the point you guys are bringing today is, I believe that most Biafrans will, there will be more life into their activities so that they will keep on, doing what they are doing and what they should do in order to support Nnamdi Kanu, even in his absence when he's incarcerated, and to support the agitation. So thank you very much once again. Barrister Ejimakor, you already told us that the right to self-determination is enshrined in the United Nations Treaty, to which Nigeria is a signatory. However, since 2017, the Biafra movement has been criminalized. I think you're aware of that. You have been working, on the issue of, labeling IPOB a terrorist organization. And the Biafra movement has been criminalized, like I said. As a result, more and more Biafrans who participated in the peaceful movement for Biafran freedom have been killed, arrested, and detained in hidden places. So we now know, however, that the UN has spoken out against the detention of Nnamdi Kanu, which also means that the activities of IPOB is not a criminal one. as the Nigerian government claims, I mean, but the question is, those people detained, those people that are already detained in hidden places that you can't even give account of them, what is going to happen to them? Have the UN made specific emphasis concerning those people abducted by the Nigerian government that are, detained in hidden places? Again, I would like to know, does the IPOB legal department keep official record of missing Biafra and Biafra killed by the Nigerian government?
Well, yes, this is a very good question. First of all, it's very troubling and somewhat confusing that the government of the day in Nigeria prioritized the persecution of people demanding self-determination over the rampaging terrorism that is threatening to consume the whole nation, and a terrorism that has already entered the nation's capital. It's very troubling, very confusing. It challenges every reasonable explanation that an unarmed, non-violent group that is geared towards only one thing, self-determination, is being persecuted in this way. So the question you ask is very relevant because this kind of posture by the government of prioritizing of aggressive law enforcement against IPOB members and Biafrans in general has led to a situation of a rush of arrests of thousands of IPOB members or suspected IPOB members, illegal detentions, and of course extrajudicial killings. Because, under the rules of engagement of Nigerian security forces, a terrorist who is encountered by the Nigerian security forces is meant to be shot to be killed, not even shot to be maimed or to be arrested. So that very unjustified declaration of IPOB as a terrorist group in September 2017 has led to a lot of consequences that you can only begin to imagine. And that was why I doubled up at that time in December 2017. Actually, I came into contact with Nnamdi Kanu in August 2017. The following month, IPOB was declared a terrorist organization and Operation Python Dance was commenced. So in December, I took, because of the inadequacy of domestic remedies, I don't believe that Nigerian courts are equipped to deal with the enormity and complexity of the type of aggression that was being levied against IPOB. So I took the matter to a continental tribunal, and in March 2018, the Continental Tribunal came down with a categorical ruling, a categorical decision that nullified the declaration of IPOB as a terrorist organization and declared what the federal government was doing to IPOB as gross and flagrant violations of international law on point. So, but you see, while these efforts are on, the government is not letting on. Yes, you are right. Thousands have languished in detention centers across Nigeria. We do have records, like I said, thousands, yes. And there's one fine organization in Nigeria, a very credible NGO that is called the Inter-Society. I'll use this opportunity to request you to look for them and interview them. They are keeping very good records, statistically sound records, credible records of all that have been killed or murdered, arrested, detained since August 2015. They have the most accurate record of what you are talking about right now. And if you look at that record, you will be shocked. It will shock the conscience of humanity to contemplate the enormity or the persecution that has been levied against Biafrans since August 2015. But you see, the battle goes on. For as long as we are alive, you have to keep defending yourself. Either you're defending yourself domestically or internationally, until such a time when the ultimate victory will come. So it's a very unfortunate situation, and the danger faced daily by those on the front lines, including my humble self, is quantum danger. It's significant danger. So I salute the resilient spirit of Biafrans across the world. Of course I do. But the resilient spirit of the Biafrans who are trapped in Nigeria and still upstanding enough, convinced enough to pursue their political aspirations is something that needs to be highly commended. So, but on the next note, I will urge everybody. Again, let me return back to Bruce Fein. The opinion of the United Nations is the best exemplar of dedication, a commitment to work, professionalism, and most importantly, collaboration and teamwork. So for every Biafran out there or any member of IPOB, I will urge that for whatever reason that there might have been one misunderstanding or the other, you have to find a common ground to work together. And that common ground is the quest for Biafra through the process of referendum. That is the thread that ties everybody together. So when you cast your mind to that, you will be able to stand down on certain minor sparks and disagreements that may be coming from left and right. And bear in mind that as a team, you're more likely to succeed than to fail. But as a divided house, you're more likely to fail than to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Thank you. So, Attorney Fein, the question here is, I would like to know, the relationship between Nnamdi Kanu and Britain regarding his what has happened. I mean, what has happened since he has been, in this in the hand of the DSS. I mean, following the illegal abduction of Nnamdi Kanu in Kenya, his rendition to Nigeria, and his continued detention by the Department of State Service, DSS. The United Kingdom, UK, has asked, Nigeria to explain where and how the IPOB leader, was obtained. Nnamdi Kanu has a British passport. And I mean, he's a British citizen. But apart from this incident, we haven't had anything which Britain, have done so far in order to see the release of Nnamdi Kanu. Do you see this nonchalance as an indication that the UK is condoning the extraordinary rendition of its citizen?
I think the answer is yes. And the High Commissioner fraternizes, in the southeast with the Biafran quislings. I got a response back when I was protesting the rather weak, effete response of the British High Commissioner and the Foreign Secretary to the obvious kidnapping and torture of one of their own citizens. I said, compared to the DECO, where they severed diplomatic relations for 2 years over something similar happened to a Nigerian in London. The language of the British remains one of a conviction. Unity of Nigeria is essential because they obviously have their economic claws into the Nigerian system. We know that there are kickbacks, all sorts of bribery, underhanded deals, money laundering between the two countries. So the British have played a truly disgraceful role. But that's true to their entire occupation, if you will, or in Nigeria and Africa, stemming back over a century. After all, it is kind of ridiculous to assert that Biafra is seeking to secede. You can only secede if at one time you agreed to accede. Biafra never agreed to be part of Nigeria. Not a one Biafran was consulted, voted in favor of amalgamation in 1914, over a century ago. It was accomplished by machine guns, period, which is not a legitimate source of law. And the British were treacherous then, forced and amalgamated different people with different backgrounds, cultures, language, history, traditions under one roof so they could do divide and conquer more easily for their own convenience, and then decamped in 1960. Did they decamp and offer self-determination referendums? No, they just handed it over to their favorites and said, okay, now it's your country. After they already had ensured that the boundaries were such that it was sitting there like nitroglycerin, ready to blow up, which it did in 1967. That wasn't an accident. That was inevitable from the beginning, because you had pushed under one sovereign roof incompatible peoples, cultures, understandings, values, etc. And those can all be traced back to the British cynicism in forcing the Biafrans into a country over their protest. So the British, in my judgment, are not to rely upon here. That's why I think the game really is in the United States. Britain just goes through the pretenses, if you will. They have their own problem right now, and finding a successor to Boris Johnson. This Liz Truss may win. She was the foreign secretary before. She's very weak, said virtually nothing about the Biafran slaughters while she's prancing around Ukraine. And I guarantee you, Ukraine is a tea party compared to the genocide in Biafra, a tea party. And it's not at all to condone what's happening there. But the volume, the scale, whatever, are entirely different. And the last observation I make, international law is not a suicide pact. And to force Biafra to remain in Nigeria is a suicide pact. That cannot be the law, no matter what else.
Thank you. So, Mazi Nwankwo, I recently, this is a question for you. I had an interview with one of Nnamdi Kanu's confidants, Mazi Chinasamuru. I asked him if the Igbos, if the Igbo governors were also involved in the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu. He said the Igbo governors were heavily involved. For instance, he named people like Hope Uzodinma, Dave Umahi, and others. He meant they are accomplices in the abduction and the extraordinary rendition of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. This is, however, a serious allegation. What's your take about this type of statement?
Well, I do not have any evidence to affirm, that a statement. Neither am I here to say that it did not happen. I don't have any evidence. And we don't have, from where I am, as a representative of Ambassador for Self-Determination, we do not have any evidence to suggest that the governors are involved. Then again, we are not saying that they are not involved, okay? This is a neutral matter at this point. But one thing I can tell you for sure that everybody knows is that none of them have come out to say, why are you holding this man? Why is he in solitary confinement for over 1 year without trial? It is punishment before trial, or punishment before justification. In solitary confinement, he's given a few minutes to come out and see the sunshine a day. He's sick, and they're holding him. None of these governors are coming out to say, no, this is illegal. No, this is not right. No, this is unconstitutional. Because there's a provision, even in the Nigerian constitution, to agitate for self-determination, for your freedom. It is not a crime. I am privileged to stand here with Bruce Fein and the lawyer Ejimakor that are bringing more enlightenment, okay, to the meaning of self-determination, and as it has to do with the United Nations recent decision. So the governors, they will have their own day in court, okay? So whether they were involved in the kidnapping of Nnamdi Kanu or forced disappearance, if you will, okay, that is one of this evidence. The main problem is that right now they are committing crime against humanity by the number of our people, their own citizens that are being slaughtered every day, and they say nothing and they do nothing. All of them. So that is the greater crime right here. But I don't have any evidence to answer your question directly that they are involved.
Okay, just wait a minute. Let me add this question to you as well as almost the last question. You know, the continued killing and abduction, as I've just indicated, in Biafra land, such as the abduction of the pirates, you know, these are activities that indicate for some Biafrans that Biafra land will soon be overrun by Fulani if nothing seriously is done. Of course, there is the ESN doing their best to protect the Biafran women from, you know, being raped by the Fulani irredentists that is, you know, moving everywhere there. But some experts are of the opinion that the biggest problem, however, is that people are not even aware of the impending, you know, this impending doom, because they are so occupied with the election of the Igbo president in 2023. So the idea here is that the obedience movement that is spreading like fire among the Igbos is nothing but a divisionary tactic, a political ploy, if you will, to thwart the effort of Biafrans to get more engaged in their fight for freedom. What's your opinion, especially in this issue of this obedience, you know, movement?
Let me be clear. There should only be one election conducted in Biafra land right now, and it is called a referendum. Let the people decide. Let the people vote if they should remain with one Nigeria or go their separate ways. That is the only legitimate election that should happen in Biafra land, given the atrocities and the killing and the slaughter and the crime that is being perpetrated on an hourly basis in the country. You have to be alive in order to participate in an election. I will not support being part of legitimizing the Nigerian corrupt selection system because it's not an election. Every Biafran, every Igbo person should be more consumed by the things that are happening in our land and not an election. I'm not against Peter Obi. I don't know him. I've not spoken to him. But every Biafran should be more concerned about the atrocities and the impending danger that has befallen all of us at this time, and not trying to be president of a failed state. Nigeria is a failed state by the definition of failed states from all angles. That is my position.
Thank you very much. So my last question will go to you. Okay, let me split it. First of all, Barrister Ejimakor, then I will come to you for the last question, Attorney Fein. Barrister Ejimakor, you know the Binsman Lego suit in UK. You know the activity with Nnamdi Kanu case. Could you please tell us if they are doing anything, you know, with the British government? What is happening there, so that Biafra we know?
Yes. Let me begin by expanding on a brief mention of the Omar Diko saga of 1984 that was mentioned by my colleague here, Bruce. Well, the details are as follows. In 1984, Nigeria, under the same person that is the president now, presumably the same person, attempted the rendition of Omar Diko, and it triggered a quantum countervailing actions by the British government of the day. Like Bruce said, diplomatic relations were severed by Britain with Nigeria for 2 years. 4 persons were convicted and they served various prison terms ranging from 4 to 7 years. Several people were deported. The Nigerian aircraft that was the intended ship for the rendition was itself interdicted in England, and a host of other things, and it drew worldwide condemnation. So that was the British or Britain of 1984. So I'm wondering what changed between 1984 and today that Britain, a whole Great Britain, could not assert itself more on this issue of rendition of Nnamdi Kanu. That has been a personal disappointment that I have struggled with since June 30th last year, when I wrote the first letter that I did to the British High Commission here in Nigeria. And later on the following month, when I came into contact with the Bindemans of the UK who are handling this matter in the UK. The Bindemans have tried to get the British government to administratively intervene. Of course, I know for certain, I have seen documentations of their interventions. I'm not saying they abandoned Nnamdi because no, they did it. What I am saying is that their diplomatic intervention is not as aggressive as it should be. It's not as aggressive as it was in 1984 over the case of Umaru Diko. If their diplomatic intervention has been aggressive enough, I think it might have yielded some positive results by now. And my opinion is not isolated. My opinion is shared by my colleagues in the UK, the Bindemans. So just recently, the Bindemans lost their patience and went to court with an application to the competent court in London, in UK. It's public information. So once the matter goes to court, it becomes public. So I can reveal it here for the first time that the case is in court right now. So the application is simple and one only: to get a court order from a competent British court compelling the British government to ramp up on her diplomatic protection of Nnamdi Kanu. So that's where the case is right now. And according to the assessment made by my colleagues, the case has very high likelihood of success. So that's where we are right now in Britain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let me have the last question for Attorney Fein. I tried to, the effort today is through your help to bring this idea of the agitation for self-reliance, to the heart of the Biafrans, because I think a lot of people are confused. Some people are, the Biafran struggle is more or less about the struggle for, identity. And as we know, from existential point of view, the issue of identity is one thing that mankind keeps struggling for, in order to ask the question, who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? So, and Biafran issue is always a hot one. If you will go back to the realm of the realm of slavery, colonization, and post-colonization, we also know that the Biafran case is a special one, because not just because of the number of Biafran that were taken to the new world that we call diaspora today, but also the role of Biafra in trying to create what is Nigeria today, and trying to find their place in Nigeria today and never find it. So the question of Biafra remains. And I'm very grateful today that you guys are able to make Biafrans understand that the issue of self-determination, or the quest for it, is not even a crime. So the one last question I would like to ask Barrister Fein is, just for him to tell us once again in his own word, give us just answer. The question is, again, is the quest for self-determination any place in the world a criminal act?
The right to self-determination is enshrined as an international human right. It's Article 1 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, to which Nigeria is a signatory. But you can trace the right to self-determination back to our American Declaration of Independence, which said we're all endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. Among those, life, liberty, and pursuit of the happiness. And governments are formed to secure those rights. And the declaration says when any government becomes destructive of those rights, it's not only the right, but the duty of the people to alter and abolish it. So it's simply not a right to self-determination. It is a duty to self-determination, because it's the only way that you can preserve yourself from being in a suicide pact, by under a sovereignty where you have no political power. There's no political redress, which is what we have in Nigeria today. So it is very clear that under international law, including the Declaration of the Working Group, the right to self-determination is a protected fundamental human right. Indeed, it's preservative of all other rights, because without self-determination, you can work working under a government where you have no power, and all the other rights get succumbed because you are treated as a slave, as a second or third class citizen. We saw that with regard to Jews in Nazi Germany and elsewhere. At that point, self-determination is the only way you can actually exercise your other rights: free speech, freedom of press, due process. Because living under a government that's lawless, and I say the Nigerian government is infested with criminals. It's infested with criminals. It makes a farce of all international legal rights. And that is why, despite the best efforts, if you will, of the Nigerian government, no other country in the world has listed IPOB as a terrorist organization for seeking self-determination. None. I, in fact, have a lawsuit in the United States for defamation for someone who said, IPOB needs to be listed by the Secretary of State as a terrorist organization, which of course is never going to happen. You're accusing them of engaging in terrorist act? Totally fanciful article that was written. My suspicion is somebody in the Nigerian government called this professor up in Baltimore and said, hey, do us a favor and we'll put your niece on a payroll and pay her $100,000 or naira or something of that sort. So there needs to be no reluctance, no embarrassment about championing self-determination. I go back, it is a duty, and it's a duty for this reason. It's because when amongst peoples there is a display of feebleness, a lack of resistance, and a complacency with oppression, it emboldens the perpetrators to even worse crimes. That affects everybody. So if you don't stand up for your rights, it doesn't just affect you. It affects all of your colleagues, all of the peoples of the same like and culture and heritage. And that's why it is simply not acceptable.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, Mr. Robinson, let me add to what Bruce said.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, yeah, I agree with Bruce, but in addition to that, Nigerian law recognizes self-determination. The problem we have here is a lot of people, including the people that enforce the laws in Nigeria, are probably not even aware of it, because it's not a law that is very popular, but there is a law that is called the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The fact that it's called African Charter doesn't mean it applies in Africa. It applies in Nigeria. It was passed by the National Assembly of Nigeria in 1983. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Anybody listening to this program, including all the Biafrans out there, and even the government agents that are very good in monitoring broadcasts, should write it down. Article 20 of this law, which can be found at Chapter A9, the Laws of Federation of Nigeria 2004, states that all oppressed peoples I'm paraphrasing right now. All oppressed peoples are entitled or have the right to self-determination and to free themselves from the bonds of oppression. This is Nigerian law. So this law, very law, is an affirmative defense to every accusation or allegation by the Nigerian government that the IPOB or Nnamdi Kanu is involved in any sort of criminal activity. What is playing out here is that the IPOB and Nnamdi Kanu possess a political opinion that is convenient to the government of the day. So as simple as that. So what the government of the day is doing is seeking to suppress that political opinion by means of punishment of some sort. Punishment including arrest, detention, renditions, and extrajudicial proceedings. So that the government is persecuting them for that. Does not criminalize it, to borrow your word. It doesn't make it a crime. It's just that the government chose to see it as a crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Viewers, I hope that today everybody out there would have been enriched with a lot of words coming from our erudites that have given us the opportunity to know more about the verdict of the United Nations. Let me just add my last word to what Attorney Fein and Barrister Ejimakor has just said. To summarize it in my own understanding, I will use the context of Stanley Kubrick's film protagonist called Alex in his film called what's it called again? The film of Alex, where Alex is an outcast of Clockwork Orange. Alex is the protagonist of Clockwork Orange, and he's an outcast of the suppressed society. Essentially, he is actually ill-fated. His mind is construed in such a way that he knows nothing but doing wrong. But what makes Alex outstanding is that he is conscious of who he is, what he wants, and where he wants to go. So he is different from the rest of the society that are inflicted with submission. So Alex can do whatever he wants. He is a dancer. He loves music of Beethoven, and he is quite different from the whole society that are suffering from mental alienation. And then what makes Alex different is that he is self-relied, even though he is ill. So in that very film, what Kubrick wants to show is that self-reliance is something that is unique to man. Even in the Bible, that you can be a bad person, you can make a choice, is also your duty. Like Attorney Fein said, it is our duty to make choice even when it is wrong. Thank you, Biafrans, for paying attention. For those who want to understand, let them understand. In Igbo language, they said, Asoro Omaru, Omaru, Asoro Feke, Oferi Sitinionofia. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for being around. God bless you. God bless Biafra. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.